Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 56 of the Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. This is one of those episodes where we interview someone, and this time it's Chris Sumby, the man, the myth, the legend, the director of show production, and, all importantly, band bookings at the mighty Stonedead Festival. Without further ado, here he is. It's Chris Sumby, everyone.
Hello.
How you doing, Chris?
Mighty fine.
Hello.
How are you?
Welcome to our... Well, we're good. Welcome to our humble podcast.
Thank you for
we're
having
very
me.
pleased to have you.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Meet Brian. You met Brian.
Hi, Chris.
And, my name's Matt. We are veterans. And dare I say, Chris, you created a monster. Not just you. I know you've got the rest of your team, but Stonedead has become a phenomenon in a relatively short space of time. Where did it all start?
It was a conversation. Well, to be honest, it could have started quite a few years before it actually did. There was conversations on Facebook on the Monsters of Rock Veterans group about sort of, we could do our own festival and all this. And I'd actually done a very small indoor event in Sunderland for 6-7 years. So I'd said, I've got a little bit of experience of this, and I also booked bands for Sunderland University. So I threw my hat into the ring, and, those conversations happened, and then it was a case of interest died down. And then in 2017, the conversation flared up, and I think the right people sort of said, oh, I'd be interested in that, and it all kind of came together. I think we started off with, there was 10 people initially in that first group, and then it slowly dwindled down to 5 before we sort of got 2018 off the ground properly and into the swing of things. So yeah, it's, as I say, it all started from Facebook, just a general sort of we could do this, and basically the stars aligned, and it all kind of came together. And I was given initially the job of putting the bill together, which that first year, as you can imagine, for a new event, after other events had kind of appeared and then crashed and burned, a lot of agents and management were quite sort of skeptical about some fans come along, and we had to kind of work really hard that first year to get that lineup together. But we got to the August of 2018, we did 1,800 people. We went in the red. We didn't lose any money. We didn't lose our houses, which was the big fear of having to sort of tell our other halves that we weren't going to be able to go on holiday for 6 years and we were going to eat rice and peas forever. So all in all, that was a success, from sort of just a chat on Facebook, really.
So what were those first... you're right. I mean, you started from scratch. What were those first conversations like with the bands that you had back in 2017, 18? Obviously, as you said, first, and you had Fallen Mafia, Hand of Dimes, Graham Bonnet, and so on. But Skid Row. How did you broach the subject with their management, for example?
Well, obviously, when we were putting the lineup together, the way we did it the first year is because we only had a small amount of cash available initially. So we put Graham Bonnet, Massive Wagons, and Cruel Molly on the poster first. Got that launched, and then started selling tickets. That gave us a bit of collateral behind us to then put the deposits down for the next band and so on. And with Skid Row, it was a case of I spoke to the European agent, and I just asked if they were available, explained what we were doing. And he basically came back and says, yeah, they're available. What's your best offer? So we went in with an offer, and he kind of ummed and ahed and said they might need a little bit more. So we went back again, and they came back and said, yeah, but the only thing is, obviously, with you being a new event, we want all the money up front. You can't be sort of doing us 50% up beforehand and 50% after, which is fair dues because, they did know us from Adam, and as a new event, the trust's going to be quite minimal. So, we got them. To be honest, thinking back for a first event, it was quite straightforward. It wasn't that difficult. But yeah, and they came and they conquered. They were absolutely fantastic first year headliner.
How do you switch from being the fan of a band? Skid Row were Skid Row, one of those bands that were, they were at Monsters of Rock. They were in the 1992 bill. So is it much easier to deal with the agents about trying to book a band? You're not having to deal with the band themselves and sort of switch from being a fan to being, I've got a job here to do the best deal that I can for the festival and make sure that we cover our costs. How do you feel about wearing different hats?
It was quite difficult the first year. I mean, Skid Row were one of my favourite bands as a youth. In fact, there's a photograph on my Facebook where I'm stood at Monsters of Rock in 1992, which was the first one I'd ever attended. And behind, it's obviously you're at the back, just sort of behind front of house, and it's before Skid Row due on stage. Uh-huh. So I'm stood there waiting for Skid Row in this photograph when I'm 14-year-old. And then sort of to be able to book them for our first event. And then when going up and introducing myself to the band and asking if everything was okay, and said, oh, by the way, lads, here's a photograph I'd like to show you. And Scotty Hill and Dave Sabo, Snake, and Rachel Bolan were like an absolute, it was like sort of, it was almost as if it was a fan moment for themselves, seeing a photograph of the crowd from that side on, waiting for them to come on. And they were just like sort of, because obviously they've played some massive gigs in their career. I mean, they did the Moscow Peace Festival and loads of other huge stadiums and stuff. But I think to see it from a fan's perspective, that side on, and then to be talking to a fan who's then booked them a couple of years, quite a few years later, I mean, it blew my mind. So I'm guessing it blew theirs a little bit. But I mean, going back to your question, Brian, You've got to do what's right for the festival. I've got a certain budget. I know how much money we can spend. I know how much everything's going to cost. I speak to Neil and Louise, the other directors, daily about everything what's going on with the festival. We're all in it sort of pretty much every day. So it's a case of this is the budget, and every now and again it'll be like a slight temptation to sort of overpay and try to get the next level of band. But then you kind of look and think, this could effectively sink the festival, and we'll do this for like sort of chasing a bit of glory, and then there's no more. So you've just got to like use that little bit of like sort of maturity, which over the last 6 years, it's a lot easier not to get carried away, because it's a case of in your mind, how much you've got, how much you can pay, and that's your budget. And agents will say, well, we need this, and it's like, that is how much I've got. I'm sorry. We're a 5,000 cap festival. The production we put on is huge, so there's only a certain amount of money available for the artists, and that's it. And sometimes they'll sort of like, well, thank you, but we can't do it. Other times there's a little bit more negotiation, and we can work it out, and we'll get them, and they come and play and have the best time ever.
I think that's it's very prudent of you. And to be taking that type of approach, and as you say, you've been going 6 years. Obviously, there was the year that we all missed out because of the pandemic. But in the whole time that Matt and I have been doing the podcast, there has been people trying to put festivals on. There's been a few events that have just gone to the wall over the years, and people have really struggled to put. So you have to be prudent, and you have to look at everything in the whole and say, look, we just can't push too far for some of the let's just say major league acts that the fans on your Facebook page will ask you to put on, but you work within your means, which is fantastic. Still great bills though.
Yeah. It's a lot of the way I sort of work it's from reading Niall Quinn's biography, which is a fantastic read, and there's a lot of stuff in there. Follow anybody who's looking at promoting a gig, read Niall Quinn's biography, because there's a lot of stuff you can relate to in terms of like the music industry, and it makes a lot of sense.
He was a very sensible chap, wasn't he, Niall Quinn?
Yes, very sensible. But he had a very good head on his shoulders.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, Chris, when you mentioned you were a fan of Skid Row and you had them as the headliner on the first festival, and I'm sure you're all rock fans. It must be quite fun just kind of listing down, right, who do we think for 2025, 26 even. Is it that sort of process? Is it a fantasy league type thing that you just kind of think, oh, I'd love to have Diamond Head, my favourite band, or Brian's favourite band, King's X, for example. How tempting is it just to sort of make it a fantasy league thing?
Probably the first 2 years quite easy, but there's a lot of theory work I put into sort of getting the bill. And I did an interview actually on the day, and I used Monsters of Rock 1985 as a prime example, with ZZ Top, Marillion, Bon Jovi, Metallica, Magnum, and who else played 1985? It was ZZ Top, Marillion, Bon Jovi.
Oh, that's
Bon Jovi, yeah, Metallica, Magnum, and Rat. That was it, Rat. So basically, I mean, that lineup there it's quite eclectic, isn't it, really? Because you've got Marillion, ZZ Top, Metallica, you've got sleaze, you've got prog, you've got blues, you've got the glam stuff. And it was basically, I think, what Maurice Jones and his team tried to do that year is sort of like say, right, okay, we'll get the headbangers in, but we'll also get the people who like the pub rock and everything like that. And for me, that's what I try to do every year when I come up with a list of bands, is sort of say, right, okay, we've got a classic metal band, we've got something bluesy, we've got something sort of a bit hard-edged, we've got something a bit sleazy, we've got some new wave of British heavy metal in there, and it's just trying to do that. Sometimes it's not as easy as that, and sometimes we'll get an abundance where you can pick and choose like which band you have for which variation. So in terms of like a fantasy lineup, I mean, I'll tell you now, out of every festival in the world ever, I would say Monsters of Rock 1988 would be my ultimate fantasy lineup. It's just that, like, Maiden, Kiss, Dave Lee Roth, Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, Halloween. That's when you look at sort of that on one lineup to where the level of the bands they are all now. I mean, that's absolutely unbelievable. And you know, for me to sort of like say like that's a fantasy lineup, and then look at Stonedead and go, ain't going to happen. You know, it's like that would bankrupt the festival and possibly like everybody else who walks through the gates.
Talking of eclectic, the bill for 2024 has just been released. And you're right. And you've got the Bites, who are excellent. Tail Gunner, who I think, talk about Nwabum, I mean, they're like the new Nwabum. Bonafide, Eclipse, Doro. There's certainly a lot going on. We won't ask you about the headliner, Chris, by the way. I'm sure that's a very well kept secret, so we won't touch upon that unless you want to tell us behind closed doors. We're very happy, but we won't divulge. Of course, we've got who we'd love to see, but and that brings me on to sort of. I suppose, how far out do you book everything? You know, we're talking now that you've announced the most of the bill for next year. I mean, how far out are you planning? Let's say 25, maybe even 26.
There's conversations already happened for 25 and 26.
Wow. Are they going well, Chris?
Yeah. We've got a couple of things penciled in for 25, which I'm very pleased with. And then which there'll be conversations between myself and the other directors just to sort of like firm that up once we've got a bit further down the road. But yeah, I tried to keep it at 18 months, but once this is one of the beauties of a 9-band bill is you've got limited slots, so you fill up quite quickly. And then when some of the agents are coming at you saying, we've got this available, we've got this available, this available, you say, I'm sorry, I've already got my headliner, I've already got my special guest. And then they'll say, what about 2025?
Right.
And it just naturally leads on from there. I mean, the answer, one band we tried for 2019, 2020, and we basically got told 2023 will be the year. So we've had them penciled in since, I think, 2019, 2020, and obviously through COVID. So we had an inkling that we'd be getting the answer 2023 or 2024. So yeah, it's some of the stuff we're looking at quite a distance. But you've also got to think there's bands who aren't even on the scene yet who will probably be on in 2026. there'll be someone who we've never heard of, who are just kind of like in the throes of being a band at the minute, and then they'll get a bit of momentum in the next 18 months, and that'll be it. It's a bit like South of Salem, really, and then the Raps, and the obviously likes of Dead Man's Whiskey and all the bands who've had early doors, so I try to keep as many slots available early doors for these new hot bands, just really because I think there's a lot of them need a bigger stage and they need the opportunities, and the opportunities are quite few and far between, really, sadly.
So the one thing I was just there's a couple of things, Chris. You're absolutely right about the how eclectic and covering good genres within your bill. For me, I'm your classic AOR guy. So the fact that you have you've had Eclipse on the bill, I absolutely love Eclipse. And in previous years, Heat, you've had Heat at your festival. So I'm your AOR guy. So you've got me.
Ty Kettle as well. We should have had Ty Kettle in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got me in. But the one thing I was really, really intrigued and wanted to ask you was one of the highlights for this year's festival, and I know they were on early doors on the day, was the Raps, the Canadian band, and they were phenomenal. I loved them, the whole Van Halen vibe. And where and how did you find them? Because that was, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was their first ever show in the UK, wasn't it?
First ever show in Europe.
Wow. So was that? How do you? What homework do you put in? Because there was a lot of on the Stonedead Facebook page. As everybody talks about how great it was this year, there was a lot of love and feedback for the Raps, and probably a lot of interest from them to come back into the UK because it was such a great show.
Yeah. With the Raps, they were. I looked up booking them in, I think it was June 2022. So it was before we'd actually done the 2022 show. And I'd just been reading Classic Rock, and there was a small article on them about sort of Canadian band the Raps have releasing them. So just doesn't hurt to have a look. So had a look at them on YouTube and Spotify, and I thought, these have got something. These are really good. Yeah. Like, get some live footage up, because bands can have the best promotional video, like whether like in a studio with like a million takes and everything like that. So they look dynamic and energetic, and then you see the live videos and the kind of like George Formby, just sort of like strumming and there's just no dynamics. So I had a look at some videos, and they'd been playing some big gigs in Canada. So I just got in touch with the management and said, listen, we do this show in the UK called Stonedead. I'd love to have the Raps over. Obviously, they've never played the UK or Europe before, so the budget isn't going to be huge because they're not going to be a huge sort of like appeal. But I guarantee when the band come over, they're going to appeal to a lot of people, and it's going to be very much worth the while. So we discussed it, got everything agreed straight away. Spoke to Jacob the Raps like quite a lot about plans we had for the show and what we wanted to do to make it look spectacular, with like the dancers coming on for Ballroom Blitz and just loads of other stuff just to add to the show. And yeah, they came and they were totally humbled by it all. They came, the girlfriends were there, and they were like sort of amazed at the reaction they got for the first time in the UK. And they were like, sort of like, we don't want to go home. We want to keep on doing this. And it's like, so I'm hoping now that people have seen them, they're going to get opportunities to come back, maybe as a support band or bring a package over, because I think they would be really popular. And then they did other gigs in Europe, and they went down really well as well, So stuff like that is what we'll try to do every year. We'll try to get like someone who's, maybe one or two people turned up, but not everybody. We did this with Massive in 2019. And when we announced Massive, they were one of the first bands we announced in 2019, along with the Amorettes, Diamond Head, and Glenn Hughes. And people were like, oh, I've never heard of Massive. And I remember on the Facebook going, I guarantee they will be one of your new favourite bands this time next year once you've seen them. And they came on, they were second on, and from the off, they had everybody who was watching in the palm of the hand, and then they did Dance Floor, and that just became like a Stone Deaf anthem at the time, now Stone Dead. And every year would just try to sort of like pick a band out who people haven't heard of and seen. Like the Bites would had them kind of in the pipeline long before that they've started appearing on other gigs. I was a bit kind of like, everyone else is going to see them before we've announced them. But like we've been talking about having them for like the last 18 months with Earache Records. And it's the same with the likes of Eclipse and Bonafide. There's people who've never seen them before because they don't tend to play the UK a great deal. And they've like gone like, when they first saw the post when we did the big announcement, it was like, I've never heard of Eclipse and never heard of Bonafide. I'm like, take the next 30 seconds, Spotify them, YouTube them. It's that easy. It's actually quicker to Google them than it is to comment. I've never heard of them.
But you know what's really good, Chris, is Matt and I. I'm a late comer to festivals in my life. You know, my first festival was in 2010. I did the high voltage festival. Matt and I did it the 2 years, and that was hooked. And we did Rambling Man, and we've made loads and loads of great friends. And we try and make sure that we go to as many festivals. And you know, Stone Dead for us is it's in our diary. We've all got our tickets for next year. But what's really interesting is we have our own WhatsApp group. So we've got our Stone Dead WhatsApp group with all of our friends, and it's really interesting when you announce the bill. Matt's our Nawabum historian, so of course you've got KK Priest. The guys will come on. Doro, we know Warlock from the 80s, and then there'll be a few that'll be in the bill. Where the guys, a few people in our WhatsApp group will go, Eclipse, who are they? And then I come storming in with, oh no, Eclipse are brilliant. Think about this, and what it does is the bill that you put together makes us all have a conversation, because some of us will know some of the band, some of us won't, and then we kind of go, all right, great. Well, there'll be some that were like, I'm massively up for Eclipse, but I'm kind of going, and I know Tail Gunner reasonably well. I haven't seen Ugly Kid Joe since we saw him at Ramblin' Man a few years ago, but they always put a good show on.
Your headline is probably a one-word band, isn't it, Chris? maybe 5 letters. I don't know. I'm just wondering. I don't know.
5 letters. Let's count. No. There was a few more. Maybe there's a couple of lines. We might have to sort of like arc the name or something. I don't know.
You've either got a very good poker face, because everyone would have been thinking, oh, we thought Saxon, and now he said it's more than 5 letters. Oh, who could it be? I'm sure you're not going to divulge either. I want to talk to you about social media. You've touched upon Facebook. We're on the Stonedead Facebook page. There's always a lot of speculation, and also people saying, "How about this for a bill?" I mean, firstly, how much notice do you take? And also, is there any kind of, do you get any pressure? Do you feel the pressure from fans in those situations?
Obviously, we'll keep an eye on what they want, because at the end of the day, we're doing it for them. And if they decided they no longer want it and they don't want to buy tickets, then there's no Stone Dead. So we have to pay attention, and we've got to make sure that what we do is the best to our abilities to put on the show that people want. I mean, we say every year, thank you for letting us do your festival. We're not doing it for us. We're doing it for people like us. So we do pay attention. I mean, some of the things that come up with are a bit like sort of like, whoa, hey, like some of the band suggestions and some of the requests on just the general things for the site. Like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Say, we have, and it would cost a lot of money, which would have to take from certain other pots, and other things wouldn't be as good. So we do pay attention. Personally, I like to know what we're not doing really well so we can get better, rather than sort of pay attention to sort of, oh, the toilets were brilliant this year, a good slip, the bar was really quick, yada, yada, yada. I like to know the sort of things which people had problems with so we can make it better and get everything ironed out. I've said for the last few years, we don't want to be the biggest, we just want to be one of the best. Not the best, because that's going to be impossible, just one of the best.
And toilets are very important, Chris, of course.
Yes, they are. We spend a lot of money on the toilets. It's probably, let's think after, outside of the headliner and special guest, it's probably the fourth biggest outlay financially for toilets. Right? Yep.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of money in portable toilets. You can't call them portaloos because that's trademarked.
Gotcha.
What's the one thing, Chris, in the 5-6 years that you've, whatever you've done in your previous life, what is the one thing now in the last 6 years that you've now become an expert in that you never thought in your puff that you would be an expert in?
Lots of things. Like portaloos, we had the reason I know this is because we had portaloos on our website, and they must have sort of some kind of IPO researcher who just types in sort of portaloo into Google, and then it pings up on every website like what's using the term portaloo. So this lady had emailed and said, oh, just to let you know that portaloo is a trademarked name, yada yada yada. You can't use it unless you officially using portaloos and everything. So I was like, okay, thanks for this information. I will now change it to porta crapper. And that was the response I used, and she never emailed back.
Oh, brilliant.
So yeah, I mean, things like just understanding some of the legalities of it. Fortunately, we've got a fantastic lady called Fiona who helps us with all of our legal stuff now. And anything we need help with, just drop her an email and she'll sort of come back with a sensible solution rather than my sort of off the cuff antics and sort of like, no, Chris, you can't do that. It's like, all right, okay then. So yeah, we've gained a lot of experienced people on the periphery of the team who we can go to for advice and guidance, and it just sort of sets us up well for making sure that we do everything right.
And one of the things I was going to ask, because there's, and this is good for consumers like Matt and I, we go to Stonedead, we do Steelhouse. I'm obviously up in the north. I'm up in Edinburgh in Scotland, but we've now got Made of Stone. Matt goes to a few other festivals. Is there a sense of community amongst the all of the festival bookers? Do you all talk to each other in the sense of whenever you're looking at bills or looking at do you sort of go, well, this guy, this band or this artist is coming over to the UK, rather than you all try and book the same sort of bands? Do you have, do you work in collaboration with other festivals?
Yeah, there's a few which I talk to, on a daily basis or weekly basis. Yeah. I was just talking to Raz White at Call of the Wild earlier on, just about a few things, because he also represents She Burns Red. He manages them. Over COVID, I was talking to the guys from Steelhouse quite a bit, just when things were looking like they were going to open back up, but we knew that bands from outside the UK wouldn't be able to get in. So I was speaking to Mikey and Max about what they were looking at. So we didn't book the same bands, like, because we went for Massive Wagons, they had Stone Broken, and we pretty much had the same lists. And I just said, listen, this is who we're interested in.
Yeah.
Have you got them? And they said, yeah. And I said, right, okay, I'll avoid them, and then we'll try other avenues. And it's just a little bit of mutual respect like that, where we'll try and help each other. Sometimes it's not as easy because the agents won't divulge where they're playing and stuff like that. So you've got to take potluck, or if you're friendly with the other promoters, you can say, these are who I'm interested in. What's your thoughts? And they'll go, yeah, we're keen as well. And then they'll say, all right, okay, we'll leave you to it and stuff like that. So there's quite a few of us who do talk and help each other out as best we can. But at the end of the day, everybody's interest lies with their own festival, and they want to make it as good and as best as they can, which is only natural.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the event itself, Chris, which is an amazing event. As you say, it's for the people, by the people, and the vibe is great. It's fantastic. They're always very friendly. They're very jovial. But what about the bands? Tell us about the bands. We're interested in the backstage stories. But firstly, what do you do when someone drops out? I've always wondered that, because this year, where are we? Mason Hill sadly had to drop out, and you brought in the excellent Florence Black to short notice. Do you have a bench? Not literally, obviously. Do you have a kind of like a set of reserves or someone you can call upon? I know that Those Damn Crows have stepped in a few times at festivals over the years. As you said, COVID affects a lot of people. But do you kind of allow for it? Do you have a contingency plan?
One of the joys of the way we work is we've always got conversations going with the agents. Regardless of what we've got on the lineup, there's always conversations going backwards and forwards. Going back to 2021, when we had, I'm trying to think, we had Thai Kettle for 2020. They couldn't get over, so we thought, right, we'll try European bands. So we went with Heat. And then into 2021, because we had VA Rocks Massive for the Friday night, and then we had Massive Wagon, we had Heat for the main day on the Saturday. We knew that they were going to get over in July. That was like, there was just no flights coming over. There was flights, but they would have had to come in for 2 weeks to do a one-off gig. And so we kind of said, we'll put it on the back burner for this year. And then obviously we'll have Wagon stepping and the treatment coming in. But we'd already had the treatment booked for 2022. So I just spoke to their agent and said, listen, can we move you forward a year? And they said, yeah, the lads will bite your hand off for that. So it was great until 11 o'clock on the Friday night of 2021. I got a phone call to say the treatment can't play tomorrow. The singer's got COVID. But fortunately, we had Blaze doing it with Absolver. So Absolver stepped in. So sometimes it's good luck rather than good management. But we do sort of now have like options. It's like in a football analogy, we'll keep the bench full. And we'll make sure we've got a good bench.
My wife asked me to ask you a question, Chris. She said, what are the highs and lows of a festival? You've been doing it for a few years now, but the high points and the low points.
I think the low points were obviously during COVID. That was really difficult because it was kind of like unprecedented times, but the whole world was going through it. So it was a case of like, you can't feel sorry for yourself because there's people going through a lot worse than you worrying about your festival. But every other festival was going through. And as I say, we built up a good little rapport with other events and sort of like what you're doing. And like we did our web fest, people were doing webcasts. So as much as that was a bit rough, we managed to get through it and we came out the other end quite well. I think, to be honest, the lowest point of all of this was maybe early 2018 when there was a little bit of turbulence, I would say, with the way Stone Deaf at the time was running, and there was a little bit of inexperience in the team, and just there was like little rumblings, and we had a few people drop off going, I just can't do it, this is just not for me. And it left us with 5 people, which eventually was just me, Louise and Neil left running it as directors. So it was a case of literally grabbing it by the scruff of the neck, putting your big boy's pants on, and just saying, well, we've committed to this now. We've got nearly 1,000 people already who bought tickets. You're going to let them down if we don't do it. So it was a case of just get on with it. And and that was quite tough and hard, because you were trying to convince people that we were going ahead and to buy a ticket early doors, just because the way we're having to pay the bills. But fortunately, it kicked in and we did all right. As I said, we had 1,800 people in. We weren't in the red. We've never been in the red, touch wood. So that was probably the roughest point, like maybe it's a low. Highlights, far too many to mention. I think every year's got a dozen. But I think, personally, that first year when we opened the gates and we had like thousands of people coming straight, 1,800 people streaming in, and just the faces was just absolutely like beaming, because they'd been with us from the start, and they could see obviously all the tears and the blood and stuff would put in. And I would also say maybe when we opened the gates in 21, because we'd gone through so much with COVID, we'd got to the gig on the Monday, there was no stage, the stage was delayed, we didn't actually get the stage being constructed till the Thursday. They were still actually putting the PA up as people were queuing to get in on the Friday night. But on that Saturday, once people came in and could see the arena, and for a lot of them it was the first gig they'd done in 2 years, and just to see that the beaming faces was like, I suppose, imagine being working in Disney World, seeing small kids coming through and seeing the castle and Mickey Mouse for the first time. That's what it was like for us, just seeing them people. And then 22, when went big with the production and the bigger stage and everything, and the people who've been there from the first year coming in to see the arena with the big screens and the big stage, and just the jaws dropping as if to say, we've all been part of this, and look at what we've done. So, as I say, there's dozens of highlights every year, but I would say those 3 moments over the 6 will probably be the ones I would, if we ever did our memoirs, that would be like the highlights in the memoirs.
And it's and
there's an idea, Chris. The Stonedead story. How about that?
Well, it would be a good one. There's some of the stories which will be included with that, and we've already said jokingly, if we went to Netflix, we'd have Windsor Davies for Neil, Lee Evans for me, Sandra Bullock for Louise. I can just imagine Lee Evans sort of running around going, I can't believe what's happening, we've got no stage, sweating and sort of like with his towel and stuff like that. I think it would be hilarious.
Who's going to play Crusher, though? Who would play Crusher?
Crusher would have to play himself.
He would. That, that's a lovely touch. For those of us who are, you've got your Monsters of Rock veterans, but then you've got your Kerrang veterans. And just seeing Crusher on stage and doing what he does in his own inimitable way, it's amazing. But I have to say, one of the things. One of the questions I have, so over the years, you have listened to your fans. The one thing I will say is, from 22 to 23, the way in which whether it's a subtle change, the way in which you changed the whole taxi, that ran a dream this year, Chris. That was excellent. What's been your biggest? Because 2023 was a great bill. The weather was kind. For those that were travelling down from Scotland, we were kind of going, this could be a real rain fest, and we weren't too bad. What's been the biggest learning from 2023, from the feedback that you've got that you take into 2024?
There's always bits from each year when we're talking to the fans. Me, Louise, and Neil go out every year on the Sunday morning. And we'll walk through the campsite, ask everyone if they've had a good time, sort of like, how's it been for you? And we have a good chinwag, and the majority of people are always sort of, ecstatic and really kind and stuff. And then you'll get a little sort of like a grumble about, and some of the stuff I'm thinking, well, there's not a great deal we can do about that. Like, sort of the bumpy ground in the campsite or the potholes in the car park. There's not a great deal I can do about that. Just maybe sort of drive slowly on your way home. Yeah. But I think from 23, obviously the differences is from 19, 21, 22, 23, is we've increased capacity as well each year. So we haven't done it too quick. We made sure that we're comfortable with what we're doing, and then we're going, right, okay, let's take a step up and go with another 1,000, and then another 1,000, and then get to a point where you kind of know you're touching your limits with like the car park and then the campsite and in the arena. And what we don't want to do is get it so everyone's like shoulder to shoulder and they're stepping over people that get around the arena if they're at the back. Yeah. We want to make sure it remains comfortable and spacious, but in the same means have a good atmosphere and have enough people there to pay the bills.
One of the things I was gonna, and you must. This is really, I don't want to use the word conspiracy theories, but what was fantastic this year is we saw Brian Tatler. So Brian Tatler was in amongst watching the gig. And also, I think Blaze was in the audience as well too.
Yeah, Blaze and Brian Tatler came together.
They did, and you've no idea where you know, Matt's a massive Diamond Head fan, and they're there. You know, they're sitting watching the festival, and you can just imagine you're sitting there going, "Sorry, this is the fanboy in me." I'm kind of going, right. So Blaze is here. He's checking out for next year, and he's been invited down. So right, Wolfsbane. But Wolfsbane have been on before. And Brian Tatler's here. Right, but Brian Tatler. So Diamond Head have played before, but Brian Tatler's a touring guitarist in Saxon at the moment. Right, that's Saxon Neil Dawn. So you can just imagine anybody that comes as a punter or comes to watch, because at a festival, if they're in a band. If anybody sees them, I have to say, the Facebook page is amazing. How people will sort of put one or two things together, and then it's like, we know who's on the bill for next year because we've seen such and such. Honestly, it's brilliant. But the good thing is, it just gets everybody talking. And here you are, Chris, before Christmas, pretty much with a sellout festival for 2024. I'm sure a lot of the packages for camping, it's all pretty much gone, and you haven't even announced your headliner. So people trust you with the bill, but actually enjoy the festival for what it is, in that one, that, as you say, one day, one stage. Albeit the Friday, we've got the Friday night, which is, and I have to say, the Friday night this year. With Mikey Gray, Karma Effect, and Kira Mack was fabulous. So yeah.
Matt, can I just ask, did you come to Stone Deaf in 2019?
I did not. No, I had cancer, Chris. I was recovering from cancer, so I missed a couple of years, and this year I moved house. Why'd you ask, my friend?
Well, if you go on YouTube and Stone Deaf 2019 Diamond Head, Am I Evil? And this was like possibly one of the most amazing things ever. Speaking of highlights, this was like absolutely mind-blowing. For our second year, I mean, we had Glenn Hughes, Inglorious, Phil Campbell, Wayward Sons, Jeff Tate, Diamond Head, the Amorettes Massive on the Saturday, with Samarkand as the opener. And we had a Dakota doing a flyover, and they were meant to do the flyover just as the Amorettes were coming off stage, and it got delayed slightly. You get live music delays, but this was a Dakota doing and it got delayed. So we got word that they were going to come over, and it was like, and looking at the time, it was going to be mid-diamond, and I was like, oh shit! Just what you want is like sort of there on stage, and there's a bloody plane flying over. So anyway. Just as Diamond Head were doing Am I Evil, and it builds up, and then all of a sudden the guitar solo kicks in. This Dakota just like come over the crowd, and it was just like you couldn't time it any better. It was just like the most amazing timing ever. And as the song finished, and it was like, "Thank you, Stone Deaf," blah blah blah, and as the came off, the last flyer literally just right over the stage. And on the video, it's as if we'd choreographed it. It was just amazing. So watch that.
I will.
And Brian Tatler was just like, I've never competed with a Dakota doing a guitar solo before.
I must say, I love the plane. I was there last year. I don't know if it was a Dakota or a Lancaster or whatever.
Lancaster.
But I don't know whether it was the hangover from the night before or the booze on the day, but I'm standing there. It's a lovely day, and I'm in tears because there's this beautiful plain and an amazing festival. And I'm not afraid to say, but I had a few tears because it's awe-inspiring, isn't it? When you see the plane come over, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And it's, this year it went over during the wraps, just as they were coming to the end of the set. And I thought that was quite fitting as well because it was their first European gig. I just hope they don't expect that every time they do play a European gig outside because they might be a little bit disappointed.
But one of the nice things about the festival as well too, Chris, is there's quite a lot of charity support, amongst, whenever you come into with the vendors. I remember when we came in this year, there was mental health support.
Andy's Man Club.
Yeah, which I thought was really good. So in terms of some of the charity work and who, in terms of the selection of the vendors, etc., which make up the vibe or, just the whole setup for the festival. How do you, as well as booking the bands, do you get involved around sort of the help and the layout and the choice of the charities that you guys support on a year-to-year basis?
The layouts kind of evolved naturally from the first year. The first year we actually had the stage where the marquee of metal is, where the small traders tent is, the big white tent. The stage was actually there, and we've rotated around just because that first year the sun was coming down in people's eyes during Wolfsbane and the Choir Boys, and you just got everybody doing that, looking at the stage. And the vendors, the most of who did the first year have been with us ever since. And then it's just a case of listening to the fans, and it's what food would you like to see? And it's a lot of them will say, well, I went here and the food was great, but it would be nice if we had this choice. So then you go out and you look and you just try and fill the gaps. We have a lot of vegan and vegetarian people come, and people who've got nut allergies and the lactose intolerant and stuff. So on the application form now, it's a case of, do you offer vegan or vegetarian? Do you have any nut allergies? Do you sort of gluten-free, lactose intolerant? Are you cash card, cash only? And then we'll put this little sheet out every year to sort of say, these are the food vendors we've got. These are the different choices. But we also let you bring your own food in. And you can bring 4 of your own cans of beer in.
That's really good.
That is unique. I think we all applaud that, Chris. The 4 cans of beer or whatever. I mean, it's a lovely gesture, and it does stand you out from the crowd, doesn't it? Of course.
I mean, with that as well, it's that's one of the things where it harks back to the days of Monsters of Rock, where you could bring your square container in full of beer before you launched it at the stage, or someone suspecting person, and they got you on the back of the head or side of the face, or if you're really unlucky, the front. But yeah, I mean, with that, it's a case of, it's an adult festival. Everyone's mature enough not to sort of do anything daft. We know that once you've had your cans, you're going to prefer a cold pint and stuff. But obviously, if you're bringing your own favourite drinks in, it saves of having to have sort of 50 choices at the bar to try and cater for everyone's tastes. And it's just, as you say, it's a nice touch, and it just makes everybody feel like they're being treated like a responsible adult. Bringing your own food in, because you might have some kind of allergies where you need to have your own food, or you just want to have your fish paste sandwiches or whatever you want to have. But on the flip side, we speak to the traders every year and say, this is what we'd like you to do. Can you keep your prices down? What are you going to charge? And we'll monitor them, and if any of them do sort of try and sneak the prices up, we have a word, and if they do it again, they don't get invited back. Because we want people to come and enjoy themselves. We don't want to spend a fortune. We don't want them getting ripped off. But in the same means, we want the traders to make money. So we'll limit the amount of traders we have. And if we've got some guy who's doing burgers, he's the only person doing burgers. If there's a guy doing Chinese food, he's the only person doing Chinese food, curries and everything else like that. So it's basically, they've got kind of the market, so to speak. So try to be as fair as we can with the traders and make sure that they get enough footfall, but also the main responsibility is to make sure that the fans come, they're not getting ripped off with the food. They've got a good selection of food and it's good quality.
Do you know one of the things, Chris, that's actually really, really good is the self-monitoring that the fans do themselves. You know, it's probably, I don't know if it's a post that you put up or Neil puts up. It's, you know, after we've all gone away, it's really, really nice that you see after, say, 24 hours and you actually look at the site and the amount of self-policing that people do. You know, you can see if somebody has a can of beer or they have their food wrappings or their packaging lying about, people will actually get off the backsides and go and put their own stuff in the bins.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's nice when you see, you know, it's probably one of the great learnings from Monsters of Rock and Donington to what you're doing in Stonedead is you look at how it was decimated in the 80s. You know, you look at how, you know, it probably, or Glastonbury, all these big festivals where it's like takes weeks and hundreds of people to tidy it up. I know you've very much got your, you know, 150 plus volunteers, but within X amount of hours, you know, a couple of days, that site looks as if there hasn't been a festival on it because people are self-policing. People are even saying, "Excuse me, mate, you dropped your rubbish. Can you put it in the bin?" And that's one of the lovely things about how it works. And people will call people out on social media. You know, just not call them out, but remind people, hey, when you come to the festival, put your own rubbish in the bin.
Yeah. Normally the rubbish, the what Neil does with the photograph, that's normally within 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I think it's like mid-afternoon on the Sunday, once the campsite's being cleared, it's a case of this is what it's like. A lot of the time, the site's actually tidier than it is when we first take it over. Because there's been times where we've took over the site from a previous event and there's just like crap all over the place. And it's like, hang on a minute, it's like, what's going on here? You're not tidying up after yourselves. And yeah, so it's the site's tidier than it is when we're taking over. And the showground are ecstatic, you know, they know that we'll look after it, we're responsible. Yeah. And again, it goes back to sort of that we're all responsible adults who were putting it on. And 99.99% of the people who attend are like that, you know, the care, and they know that sort of like the time we're spending tidying up and cleaning up is less time we can spend making sure that everything else is running properly, and we're making sure that the good things are brilliant, you know. So it's all part of the family ethos we've got, really.
That's excellent. No, it's the vibe is amazing at Stonedead, and long may it continue, Chris. We're running out of time. We're conscious of letting you have your chili.
You should be having your tea.
So, Chris, it's currently at 5,000 people. You mentioned you've been kind of edging the capacity up over the years. What's the plan? What's the dream? Are you going to keep it at 5,000, or do you want to change sites, or what? Can you let us into the kind of long-term plan? Is there one?
The plan is just to keep on doing what we're doing and get better at it. As I said earlier on, we don't want to be the biggest. We just want to be one of the best. I think 5,000 is a nice number. Whether or not we'll go beyond that, I don't know. We're just trying to perfect what we're doing. The dream for me personally is to make sure that we sell out well in advance. Selling out by Christmas is a phenomenal dream, which I thought it's a bit pie in the sky, but the way things are going, it's looking very likely this year. We've only got, I think, just over 500 tickets left, and out since 2 months of having them on sale. So just selling out every year, I'm happy with, and I think everybody in the team's happy. Neil and Louise are ecstatic every year when we sell out. It's like we're like kids at Christmas when that sold out poster goes up. So in terms of the long-term plan is just to keep on getting better at what we're doing and just keeping everybody happy. As long as the fans and the bands are happy, everything else should just work.
So, Chris, you mentioned at the outset Skid Row, one of your favourite bands. They were first headliner on the bill. Fantasy Festival. Fantasy Stonedead. If money was no object, Who would you have on the bill? Who would be your headliner?
I mean, realistically, obviously you're at 5,000 capacity, maybe it's a smidgen more. You're not going to get your maidens, and you know. But I think for something which we could possibly do long term, I would love Nightwish. Nightwish is one of my favourite bands. Personally, I think they're bombastic in what they do. The stage show is fantastic. They're a little bit different, but in terms of the songs they do, the catchy, the sing along. Special guests, I think Airborne. That would be a good sort of axis where you've got like proper pub rock and roll, then you're going off to something symphonic and a bit more technical with Nightwish. And then as we go further down, I would love to have something like Testament or Overkill, like a really hard edge thrash band, old school thrash band. And then look at something like, I don't know, we've already had Massive Wagons, but I think Wagons would be good there for a mid-afternoon bill. And then just going further down, it's bands we've already had, I think, you know, the likes of Wayward Sons, Kickin' Valentina. Kickin' Valentina were one of the best sets, I think, for a lot of people. I'd have them back in a heartbeat.
Amazing.
South of Salem, like I would love to see South of Salem come back one day and headline. I think if they were doing their full stage show in the dark with the pyro and the dancers and everything else, that would be like on par with, I don't know, like maybe Kiss back in the day. It would just be just be amazing. But yeah, going back to the dream, I think Nightwish and Airborne as a top two would be absolutely dreamy.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Can't wait.
No pressure.
Right. Any last comments from you before I close?
No. I've got, well, apart from the fact that the Chris needs to, you know, somewhere down the line, if King's X ever come back to the UK, you know, they're special mention for King's X.
Well, here's a one for you. King's X have got the same agent as the Raps.
Wow. Oh, you heard it here first, bro.
So there's already been conversations mentioning those words.
Well, I'm sold. If you're going to say it's 25 or 26, I'll buy both years in advance pre-order.
Yeah, no, that's I looked at trying to get King's X over the last few years, and it's just one of those things where they're not available to do one-offs in Europe, and that's the big thing, trying to get a band over from America to do a one-off in Europe, or trying to get a run of dates to make it financially viable, because they're not going to come over and want to lose money. It's, I mean, you wouldn't do that, you know. You wouldn't go to work and sort of like not be able to afford to live by doing it, you know. And it's the same with bands. So hopefully one day it'll happen, but King's X is definitely on the list of many.
Wow. You made his night, Chris.
You've made my night. The fact that, anybody that knows King's X is a friend of mine.
Great band.
Oh, I saw them for the first time in 1991 at the Riverside in Newcastle.
Right.
I saw them in Newcastle. Yeah. They had a night. They were touring with AC/DC, and AC/DC. I don't think AC/DC didn't have a show at the. They
weren't playing Newcastle.
They weren't playing Newcastle.
No, they didn't.
They didn't play Newcastle. So I think they played in they would have played the NEC in Wembley, and probably somewhere up, maybe Edinburgh. They would have done an Edinburgh or Glasgow gig, and they came down, and the Newcastle audience just absolutely. We just lapped them up. You know, King's X were our band, and they played the Riverside, and they blew the place apart.
Yeah, the supported Maiden on the European leg of the No Prayer on the Road. They did the European dates.
Because Wolfsbane did the
British.
They did the British.
Wolfsbane did the Intercity Express, and then they came back and did the arena shows with Anthrax.
Aye.
And put the European dates, it was King's X. So I remember having a bootleg video, and Bruce Dickinson saying sort of like, and a big thanks to King's X for supporting us on this tour. And sort of there was a couple of grumbles from the audience, and Bruce Dickinson says, "Oh, come on, man, they're a brilliant band."
But But you know what's nice? Chris, for those people that are invested in your in the festival because they enjoy it for all of it. It's really interesting because obviously I like my prog. I like my prog metal. I love the lineup of Dream Theater with and now that Mike Portnoy's back in the band, you can't help it but go, as a fan, you're going, oh man, wouldn't it be brilliant to have Dream Theater with Mike Portnoy headlining Stonedead? So I'm as everybody will be looking at who's going in and recording an album, who's and we all have who we would like to have as a headliner, and that's the beauty of what you do. Blue Oyster Cult this year, pretty much didn't see that coming at all, and they come across, and yes, we know a couple of their big songs, the big song, but they gained a lot of fans from the set that they did on the Saturday night. So it's great. It's great.
I mean, I was stood with the manager for most of the set, and he was over the moon with the reaction they got, the production, and he was full of praise afterwards. He was over the moon with how the band were treated, how they were looked after, how they were sort of presented on stage. And I spoke to the band after the gig, and they were over the moon, because they're now sort of towards the twilight of their career, and sort of the big shows like that in Europe probably sort of aren't going to be as many. They're not going to do as many shows in Europe anyway.
Yeah.
But Blue Oyster Cult, a lot of people thought would have them on the lineup long before we did, because of the way the artwork was with the Reaper over the 5 graves.
Oh yeah.
But that artwork, it was with it being the 5th anniversary, and I spoke to Mick, the designer, I think it was in May, before we actually did 2022, and I said, look, for next year, I'd like to have the 5 graves with the lineups on, and then sort of our mascot Jeff over the top, sort of like the Tales from the Crypt kind of crypt keeper. And he said, oh, well, why don't we have the Grim Reaper? Because when we had Black Star Riders in 2020, we had an artwork done where Jeff was like a Grim Reaper on a horse, for Black Star Riders, but we couldn't fit the artwork on the poster and all the bands without it looking naff. So we kept the Grim Reaper, and everyone was like, oh, I bet it's Blue Oyster Cult with that. And it's like, it's not. It's like, and then we ended up getting Blue Oyster Cult. But because of that, people now think that there's hints on every artwork, and they scrutinise it. And it's like they have it upside down.
Absolutely.
And have it and
I read someone the other day saying, I'm looking at it now, for next year, the wings, that must mean, I don't know whether it might be, there's conspiracy theories till the cows come home. Until you announce it, of course, then that'll be it. I'm going to close now, Chris. I'm going to let you get on with your chili. So, Chris Sumby, Director of Show Promotion and Band Bookings, the magnificent Stonedead Festival. Thank you so much for being on. For those about to pod, we salute you. And as they say, we shall see you at the bar.
Yes, in August.
Indeed. Look forward to it. Take care of yourself, Chris. Thanks again. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all your time, Chris. It was brilliant. Thanks for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
See you later.
Those About to Pod, we salute you is a Maylie Rogers production.